The peasants of Northern Europe through most of history have lived simply, worked the land, and loved their villages. Their hearty fare included chewy and flavorful bread baked at the large hearth oven of the town baker. In early 14th century France, each family in town prepared their bread at home and brought it to the central bakehouse for baking. It was necessary to appear at the appropriate time, to both drop off and pick up one's loaves. Each family marked the top of their loaves in a characteristic pattern to facilitate retrieval. These French ovens were massive stone structures heated by wood. A roaring blaze early in the day heated the surrounding stone of the oven. After the fire died down, the ashes were swept away and the bread set on the hot hearthstone to bake. The heat contained in the stone of the oven was released steadily, providing excellent baking conditions. Hi, I'm Theresa Carbrey, Education Director for New Pioneer Co-op, and I'd like to share with you some of the history and some of the fun of the building of the New Pioneer Co-op Bakehouse oven. Historically, bread has played an important role in nearly every major European culture. In the Bible, the word bread is synonymous with nourishment. The English word Lord is derived from Laford, meaning keeper of the bread. The role of challah and matzah in Judaism and the communion wafer in Christianity are of course well known. The word campion is derived from the Latin campanio, meaning one who shares bread. Think about the use of the slang terms bread and dough for money. What does this say about our 20th century priorities? The origin of raised bread dates back to ancient Egypt, sometime around 4000 BC. Previously, only flatbreads along the lines of tortillas or Chinese pancakes were known. Wild strains of wheat needed to be toasted before they could be threshed, and the heat prevented the gluten development essential to bread making. When the Egyptians developed a strain of wheat that could be threshed without heating, 6,000 years of bread baking tradition was underway. A belief that white bread was superior to dark bread, common to many cultures, was already taking hold in Greece by the 5th century BC. Darker, denser breads made from barley or rye were the breads of the poor. White breads were believed to be pure, more refined, more cultured. They also cost more, since growing wheat was more labor-intensive than growing other grains. Removing the bran and the germ to make wheat flour white instead of brown also increased the price. Interestingly, until the 17th century, there were separate guilds for bakers of white breads and brown breads. This prejudice against darker breads generally continued until the 1960s, when a growing health consciousness seemed to turn the tide. The Romans baked dozens of different breads. They established a tradition known as the annona of giving free bread to the poor to help offset urban poverty. And from Rome, bread baking spread across Europe. During the Middle Ages, it was common to make bread dough at home and then bring it to the town baker to finish. Homes at the time rarely had ovens. People took bread seriously, for among the most common and serious crimes of the era were short waiting and adulterating bread. In North America, the native grain was corn, and natives made a flatbread from cornmeal, known as a Johnny cake, or Indian bread. European settlers brought wheat with them, and they planted large quantities of it wherever they settled. By the end of the 18th century, wheat had become the dominant grain of the whole continent, and in America and England, the home baking of bread remained prevalent into the 20th century. Interestingly, however, buying bread at the boulangerie, the bakehouse, in France seems to have been common as early as the 1600s. I've often wondered why bread baking in this country has lost its traditional integrity. The decline may have its roots in the 18th century. The introduction of pan baking made bread softer and puffier. In the 19th century, a distaste for sourness, ironically that same sourness that makes a San Francisco sourdough and other sourdoughs so delicious, led to the introduction of baking soda in bread baking, which made it puffier still. In the 1870s, industrial milling techniques were introduced. Flour became whiter and deader. Bakers began to add sugar to get the yeast to react, and bread got puffier still. Bread continued to get sweeter and puffier until the 1920s, when it reached the pinnacle of puffiness, Wonder Bread. Believe it or not, the original loaves of Wonder Bread were sold to Continental Baking Company, equally well known as the inventor of Twinkies. But hearty, chewy, dense, and flavorful hearth-style breads are very different from the breads commonly found in 20th century America. It's a happy moment when you can connect with a lost part of your heritage. The breads that nourished Europe for centuries can now be made and enjoyed today. The revival of hearth-style baking in the U.S. was started by a fellow named Michael London and by his wife, Wendy. Michael London was teaching poetry at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York, when he decided baking was what he really wanted to do. He apprenticed in bakeries in this country and in Italy and France. He met and married Wendy Walham, who was baking and selling bread in Greenwich Village. Together they started a bakery and ultimately a renaissance in European hearth-style breads. Michael and Wendy traveled in Europe, sampling breads and pastries at every chance. Their traditional European breads, baked in brick ovens, were so remarkable they resolved to master the skills of making them, eschewing commercial yeasts in favor of making their own starters, using wild yeasts from the air or from organically grown fruit. They shaped the loaves by hand and let them rise slowly for better flavor. The products of the London Small Bake Shop in Saratoga Springs received tremendous acclaim. Their ambition to make and display the very best products from the very best ingredients led to praise from many sources. Eventually, the Londons went on to establish Rock Hill Bakehouse, where Michael and Wendy's scholarly research and irrepressible creativity emerged as a line of amazing breads, farm bread, for example, whose brittle crust yields to a soft, chewy interior, whole wheat farm bread with a nutty, toasty, grain-sweet taste, the rich and dense pecan raisin, the lush and exotic chocolate cherry, as well as a variety of sourdoughs and ryes. All the breads were baked in an old-fashioned brick oven. To succeed in making hearth-style bread, one must have good dough and a good oven. Michael speaks of bread with a respect bordering on reverence. Here's some quotes. "My aim all along has been to bring together a loaf of bread that is in and of itself a complete food. And there is a fascinating alchemy in bread baking. And bread made with a natural starter rather than a commercial yeast has more structural integrity." Word of Michael and Wendy's seemingly mystical ability to create bread with genuine character attracted attention nationwide. Michael agreed for a fee to help get other authentic brick oven bakehouses going, using Michael's recipes and baking in these massive multiple hearth ovens. Cities across the nation benefited from Michael's careful coaching and time-tested recipes. Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They discovered that hearth-style breads were an irresistible draw, alone or used in their deli sandwiches. Rochelle Prunty, New Pioneer Co-op's general manager, found the hearth-style breads delicious, unlike anything available in Iowa. So she secured the agreement of assistance from Michael and also a promise of exclusivity in eastern Iowa. Arrangements were made for the oven to be shipped from France and installed in the newly built bakehouse at 1st and 5th in Coralville. Seasoned baker Rebecca Burgess of the popular Yorkland Bakers agreed to head up the new Coralville bakehouse. Hearth-style baking offers steady heat, accurate steam for great bread crust, and the opportunity to bake large quantities of bread easily. One can bake 150 pounds of bread in 1 hour. The construction of the oven is unique. The fire today comes from burning gas rather than wood, but the 8 tons of ceramic fire brick retain heat just as their ancient counterparts did. The heat is communicated through the masonry of the oven by sets of tubing. The tubing is filled in part with water and in part with air. The flame passes over the tubing, causing the water and air to become extremely hot steam. The fire bricks and baking stones take up the heat, provide a high, steady temperature that does not drop when 150 pounds of cold bread dough is placed in the oven. Here's Christian Pozard, the French craftsman who installed the new Pioneer Co-op Bakehouse oven. So, Christian, can you tell us a little about this unusual oven? I understand it weighed 8 tons for the components.
Yeah, it's quite a work to build this kind of oven. It's a brick oven. It's about 8 tons more or less. Yeah, it's built with bricks for the combustion chamber. And the body of the oven is steel. And inside there is, like we say, a huge radiator that heat by radiation the deck of the oven where the baker put the bread actually.
So the oven is from France?
The oven is from France,
As you are.
Yes, I am from France. I'm living in Boston now, but I'm from France originally, yes. And it comes from northeast of France. It's made in Thionville, north city.
So if you traveled in France, you would see ovens like this?
There is a lot of ovens like that. Yeah, they are built since about 20, 30 years maybe. They built this kind of oven like that.
So how did you come to know how to construct them? There's many different elements, different skills in assembling one, right?
Yeah, I think I have been lucky because I learned with the old-timer guy, and he had a lot of experience in building this kind of, maybe 400 oven he built in his life. He's still working actually. He's very, very close to be retired, but still working. And he gave me all the secret of this kind of oven, particular oven, because if you, we learn by experience, It's very difficult to run. There is no book at all. There is no print, no blueprint, there is no book. So you have to know all the little tricks,
So tell us, what are some of the tricks that makes this oven different or special? How does it work?
This oven is special because the combustion chamber is made with refractory bricks.
The combustion chamber.
Only the combustion chamber, yes. There is an accumulation of heat, and this heat is released in contact with the pipe also, enveloping, like I said, the huge radiator. And this, by radiation again, heat what we call la sole, which is the piece of concrete, refractory concrete that we slide inside the oven where the baker put the bread.
Ah.
And the curve of temperature with this kind of technology is very steady. It doesn't go up and down like it goes in the rotative oven, like it goes in the regular deck oven. We call the cyclo oven, which a turbine, move the air around. It's very, very different. And the very purest baker can really bake the way we used to bake when we had the brick oven and the direct fire inside.
Of wood?
Of wood. What we did, we put the wood inside, we burn the wood, we heat it up, we remove the ashes, and we could put the bread. At this time, the temperature was a certain degree and was going down very, very slowly, making a slope, like that. So with this particular oven, we can do it also. We can heat it up the oven, shut down the burner, and leave the bread like that. And this gives a particular aspect to the bread and give very, very nice bread. Also, you have to know that you have to put a very, very good dough inside in order to make good bread, because if you put a bad dough, it's going to be bad bread.
So the heat is very steady and the heat is very high in the oven. Is this right?
High? No, I think we bake at the same temperature. To bake the French bread is about 450, 420 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 220 degrees Celsius inside the chamber I'm talking about. And I think, no, it doesn't go very high, actually.
It's not hotter, it's just more steady.
No,
so
it's more steady and there is more accumulation. He is more strong. It's stronger than the other one in the sense that he accumulates the heat. He is never, he has an inertia of heat.
Yeah.
And this is very important for an oven, because when we put such a mass of cold bread actually inside, it sucks up all the calorie, take out all the calorie of the oven. So it takes a long time to rebuild the calorie inside. And at this time, the temperature changed dramatically. So this makes the quality of an oven to keep always temperature, even if you put cold bread inside, the cold dough.
So the technical side of making this oven work is interesting, because when we look at the construction, we can see that first it starts out with a layer of the bricks sort of on the floor, and then these passageways. We see these passageways coming at an angle through which the actual, well, it's gas, right? In this day and age.
The flame runs to this channel that I create when I build the oven. And doing that, it heated up the pipe going across. You see the pipe, right, going across. And this pipe, as I say again, it's like a radiator. There's a water inside. There's about 40% water. Exactly, I don't know, really. But about 40% water. It's not full, that we know for sure. If not, it will blow up. So the water inside vaporizes, and with a lot of pressure, because it's a closed circuit of it. And of course, it built a lot of temperature, about maybe 700, 800 degrees, to release, to bake the bread.
So the steam in the little pipes circulates and is quite hot and heats the ceramic elements, and then they hold the temperature very well.
Yes, because the water inside, there is no more water inside. It's a vapor, high temperature, high pressure water inside. And it's very efficient, very, very efficient.
So how many have you built, Christian?
Oh, in America, about 30. Actually, in America, the first one was built about 12 years ago, I see, in Iowa.
Where was that?
It was in Amana Society or something.
Amana Society.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, for some reason they didn't make bread, something like that. It ended up at Atlanta. I did some of the oven and I put in Atlanta.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So many skills are involved in creating these ovens. I see you welding, and I've seen you do lots of masonry work.
Yeah.
Do you do everything? Tell us some of the processes in building this.
Yeah, it's kind of do-it-yourself, kind of kit we receive. We have to know a lot of, I would say a lot of professionals are involved building an oven like that. Metal, masonry, electromechanic, electricity, gas, mechanic, sheet metal. So a lot of skills are involved doing that. That's the reason why it's very difficult to find somebody and to form somebody, to teach somebody, because you have to have a background very special. And there is no school that are prepared to form this kind of people. So it's just experience, and I would say it's a love relation. I will say, I mean, you learn because you love it, and you have to love it to build this kind of oven. You have to love it really, because nobody is behind your back to tell you, hey, be careful, this brick is going to be, you know, a little bit crooked or something like that. You have to see it because it's very important for the oven. After a couple of years, it can, you know, disappear if you don't do a good job. So I really think this kind of job has to be done by somebody loving the oven. Really, I put my heart on it. Really,
we're lucky to have you, Christian. We're lucky. Tell me what your favorite breads are.
I like country bread, country.
With the firm crusts and.
Yeah, very crusty, very developed, and very shiny. You know that in this oven there is a very special system to make a steam to bake the French bread. You know the French bread, the secret of, don't tell anybody, the secret of the French bread is to inject a little bit humidity inside the chamber of cooking.
Yeah.
And this has an effect on the bread. Actually it becomes shiny. You know? It dilutes the starch on the dough, and by radiation it starts the glucose. It's like sugar. It becomes like caramel. Actually, and that gives the nice color of the French bread, and also he make the bread open. That also, that's what they say. I'm not a baker. I just collect some information from the master baker I meet. You know, so in this particular oven, there is a two system on each side that produces the steam, and this also make a big difference with others oven that I know that they are a little bit weak for the steam. Because more and more people use more steam for some reason, I don't know why. Sometimes they use the steam, but this, you know, you can go ahead and have good steam, really.
So you're very keen on this oven. This is a good design. And
yeah, oh yeah, I really like the oven, really, yeah. And I have built several kind of oven. I think I built about, counting the small one, the big one, the medium one, with about, I would say 25 maybe different oven, 20, 25, different oven.
Can I ask you a funny question?
Go ahead.
What brought you to the States?
Actually, I came to visit the States, you know, and I decided to stay a couple months just to visit the state, and somebody, actually an oven company, asked me in Houston. I said, I think they are looking for somebody. If you want to stay a little bit more in America, you know, maybe you have the opportunity to do. It's what I did. You know, and I'm happy.
Good. Well, we're very grateful to have you, Christian, working on our oven.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Once again, I'd like to thank Christian Hoser for joining me in a little video interview here at the New Pioneer Co-op Bakehouse site. We look forward to having everything in working order with help from Christian and his crew. I'm Theresa Carbrey, New Pioneer.
To make these outstanding breads, you need a hearth-style oven and really good bread dough. The New Pioneer Co-op Bakehouse loaves are made with organically grown wheat and rye unbleached flours, sea salt, and either a sourdough starter or a little yeast. The result is bread with splendidly rugged crusts and rich flavors. People are sometimes puzzled when they hear the breads are prepared with no added yeast. They ask, but you have to add yeast to bread to get it to rise, don't you? No. In fact, bread was made for a lot longer without adding yeast than it was with it. The ancient Egyptians discovered if the bread was allowed to sit a while, it would ferment. As a natural outgrowth of the fermentation process, the bread would rise, becoming higher and lighter. Some of the best breads in the world, like Lionel Poulain's bread in Paris, or San Francisco-style sourdough, are unyeasted breads. In recent times, commercial bakers have used more and more yeast in an effort to get their bread in and out of the oven in a hurry. This may save time and cut costs, but what the technique gains in time, it loses in flavor, texture, and shelf life. In modern times, if you can't bake your bread on the hearth of a wood-fired brick oven, how do you get it to taste like you did? For us, the answer is our amazing French oven, which heats to over 500 degrees Fahrenheit and holds anywhere from 100 to 200 loaves at a time. The canvas conveyor belt loads the floury rounds of dough onto the multiple hearth stone slabs where the bread sits directly on the floor of the oven. The resulting crispy and chewy crust protects the bread and keeps it from drying out. Steam is infused into the oven during the baking process to allow proper development of the crust. The characteristic cuts on the surface of the unbaked dough identify the bread variety and the baker. Periodic steaming of the loaves while baking keeps the crust flexible, so the cuts on the bread can expand. In the final stages of baking, the starch of the grain caramelizes with the heat and moisture of the oven, giving the delightful golden chewy crust so characteristic of brick hearth-baked bread. We're really excited about bringing hearth-baked breads to the Iowa City and Coralville community. Michael London's poetic vision of bread was revealed in a talk presented to the Chicago chapter of the American Institute of Food and Wine. Here's what he said. It was Rudolf Steiner who proposed that the aim of baking is to provide bread which is a complete food for humanity. Real country bread, then, as Steiner envisioned it, can be made when the life-giving forces of all the elements, air, earth, fire, and water, are optimally embodied in a loaf of bread. To develop a real country bread from the formative etheric forces requires, according to Steiner, a balancing act of the first order. Jeffrey Steingarten, food editor of Vogue magazine, agreed with Michael and went on to say, hearth-style bread defines the good loaf, a thick, crackling crust, a chewy, moist interior, the ancient earthy flavor of toasted wheat and tangy fermentation, and a range of more elusive tastes, roasted nuts, butterscotch, dried pears, grassy fields that emanate from neither flour, water, nor salt, but some more mysterious source. All the delightful fragrances, great flavors, and excellent nutrition of hearth-baked breads have been rediscovered for all to enjoy. We've got the right oven, bakers trained in the old world tradition of bread baking, and lots of enthusiasm. Get ready for bread like you've never tasted before. So the oven is nearly completed, Christian, and we have just a tiny little bit left to do.
Yes,
and now we're going to do a blessing.
Maybe a couple hours more to go, and it's going to be yours now. Now it's not mine anymore.
So let's do this blessing you've been telling us about. Tell me, why do you bless the oven?
Well, every time we build something, it's like a habit we hang some flowers or some branch of trees or whatever it is, just to mark the end of the building, and that give luck, as we say, It's not nothing, it's not a big deal. It's just we feel like we did a good job and we want just mark it. That's it.
So this oven will be here a long time and make much good bread, and you're...
Yeah, oh yeah. That's supposed to give you a good luck and good business and everything, really.
Great. We're going to celebrate with wine and cheese afterwards, all from France.
Very good, very good.
So
yeah.
put our blessing in place. And
Okay, so here we are. Et voilà.
Good.
This is the blessing.
This is nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Come discover the mystery and charm of brick oven hearth-baked bread. This bread is be available at the New Pioneer Co-op Bakehouse at the corner of 1st and 5th in Coralville in the spring of '95. And it's available right now at the New Pioneer Co-op at the corner of Washington and Van Buren Street in Iowa City. I think you'll like it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Theresa Carbrey. New Pioneer Presents.